Well, coming up on today's show, Elon Musk finds reverse gear on his privatisation plan, Jay Leno rides in a brand new Roadster, and the Audi PB18 e-tron goes from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. First of all, good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello and welcome to the Sunday, the 26th of August edition of EV News Daily. It's Martyn Lee here with the news you need to know about electric cars and the move towards sustainable transport. Thank you to myev.com for helping make this show. They've built the first marketplace specifically for electric vehicles. It's a totally free marketplace to buy and sell and learn about EVs along the way. And if you're new to the podcast, if this is the very first one you're listening to, you can ignore this next bit. Thank you for bearing with me, everybody else, over the last few days and fighting off the man flu. Wow, that was a doozy. A real stinker of a cold, but feeling 1,000 times better now. And on with the podcast today, and we'll start with a huge bit of news, and of course it came from Twitter. Well, actually, kind of the internet as well. If you thought it had been a breathless couple of weeks for Tesla news, brace yourself, there's more. Here we go again. To recap, on August the 7th, Elon Musk wrote this tweet. I'm considering taking Tesla private at 420. Funding secured. Then late on Friday night, a brand new blog post appeared on Tesla.com and a new statement from Elon Musk. And it's this, and I quote, well, I'm kind of picking out the highlights. Full thing is online, and I quote, given the feedback I've received, it's apparent that most of Tesla's existing shareholders believe we're better off as a public company. I knew the process of going private would be challenging, but it's clear that it would be even more time-consuming and distracting than initially anticipated. This is a problem because we absolutely must stay focused on ramping Model 3 and becoming profitable. We will not achieve our mission of advancing sustainable energy unless we are also financially sustainable. End quote. Read the full thing online. This was a huge distraction from what really matters. 6,000 Model 3s coming out of the factory every single week now. 2,000 Model S and Xs every single week now out of Fremont. The vehicles that are coming soon, the Tesla semi-truck. I get how going private would have stopped all of the negative chatter. It would have shut up the shorts, the critics, the doubters. As a non-investor, as they say, I got no skin in the game. I didn't really care either way. I kind of wanted it private because it would have just kept them all quiet, closed the doors. Tesla could have got on with making cars and business. But I get how people were gutted they couldn't be part of the story, and retail investors. There was so much speculation going on though. Look, I like EV news, and it was too much for me at times. All this long-term turmoil, which would have come from having to go through the process of taking it private, it was self-inflicted as well. The best result, by the way, will be a massive Q3, a massive Q4, profitability, and scaring the living hell out of all of the other car makers. So A, they make better EVs, and B, they make them quickly. Because if it wasn't for Tesla, they would be dragging their heels way more than they are at the moment. They've got all their money tied up in factories building combustion engines. We want them to build EVs quickly and have a wide choice of EVs on the market. It brings down price, it increases choice, and the more Tesla make more cars, better cars, all the others will have to catch up. And so that's what we want Tesla to be doing, and not this huge sideshow distraction. We want to be talking about things like getting in a brand new Roadster and doing 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. Talking about going quickly, that's exactly what Jay Leno got to do. The brand new Roadster will be 2020-ish onwards, and the Jay Leno's Garage edition featuring it was on US TV over the weekend, and shortly after, somebody ripped it onto YouTube and the rest of us got to see it. The segment's mostly about the Tesla story, the original Roadster, which Jay Leno bought himself, a huge self-confessed petrol head with hundreds of cars in his garage, and when he discovered electric cars, his head was turned. He bought the original Roadster, he's a huge fan of EVs, and now he got to sit down with the Tesla chief designer, Franz, who took him for a spin in the brand new Roadster. A very quick spin as well.
But let's see how fast we can go without leaving Earth.
Ready to go for a little ride?
Sure, what do I need to do?
So the only thing I would do, Jay, is put your head on the headrest.
Why would I need to put my head on?
Well, anything you can do, we can do better, sort of, is what Audi might be saying, the Audi PB18 e-tron. Debuted on Thursday with a splash aiming for the same rarefied air as the ultra-luxury supercars and wickedly powerful engines and sleek designs that cost millions, according to CNBC. As a concept car, the new Audi PB18 uses a powerful battery and 3 electric motors to do 0 to 60, 0 to 62 actually, because it's 0 to 100, 100 Ks they give it, which is 62.1 miles an hour, in just over 2 seconds. With a full charge, it'll do 310 miles of range. It can theoretically be fully charged because it's an 800-volt system in 15 minutes. The car's interior is designed to empower track driving, they say, and go obscenely fast. The driver sits in the middle, dead centre, a cockpit with a monocoque shell that can be slid laterally. The driver's seat moves left and right, if you like, so you can slide it towards you, hop in, and then the driver's seat moves to that middle centre position, like the original McLaren, if you like, and you sit dead centre, perfect balance. The driver is in the centre of the vehicle for optimal vision and control as well, says the article. I'll put a link in the show notes to that CNBC article. Tesla fans, I know already, will be saying, well, that's not really Roadster beating, because the Roadster does 600 miles and 0 to 60 quicker. Oh, and there's one of them driving around, because Franz has got one, and we just heard Jay Leno in one. Whereas this is a concept, the Audi is a concept, and Tesla fans will probably rightly say, come on, less of the announcements, less of the concepts. We're doing it already over here at California. Why don't you get some real cars on the road very soon? Audi would say, we're working on it. Well, into Jaguar territory now, and here in the UK, and Coventry. And following an overwhelmingly positive reaction, says Jaguar, the original concept of the Electrified E-Type means that they're going to put them into production and offer all-electric E-Types for sale. And they're not going to be cheap, though, are they? An EV conversion service for existing E-Type owners is also going to be offered. To preserve the authenticity of the donor vehicle, the base vehicle, the EV conversion is going to be fully reversible as well. Those mounting points for all of the electric stuff will be the existing engine mounting points. So if you are rich enough to own an E-Type Jaguar and you want to keep the combustion engine, somewhere safe for posterity, in case you want to pop it back in one day, that will be fine. Jaguar Classic is targeting a range of 170 miles for the all-electric E-Types, helped by really low curb weight. Those cars are so lightweight, sleek aerodynamics. The concept is powered by a 40 kilowatt-hour battery, can be recharged in 6 to 7 hours depending on your power source, and an electric powertrain with a single-speed reduction gear has been specifically designed for the E-Type, although it does use many of the Jaguar I-Pace components. Its lithium-ion battery pack has the same dimensions and similar weight to the standard E-Type 6-cylinder petrol engine, and it's in exactly the same location. Well, it kind of have to be with that massive long bonnet ahead of you. The electric motor lies just behind the battery pack in place of the E-Type's gearbox, and the new prop shaft sends power to a carryover diff and final drive. Jaguar say that using an electric powertrain with similar weight and dimensions to the outgoing petrol engine and transmission means the car's structure, including its suspension and brakes, doesn't have to be changed, simplifying the conversion and keeping the driving experience in line with the original vehicle. It drives, handles, rides and brakes like an original E-Type with front, rear, weight distribution unchanged. I'll put a link to that Jaguar article in the show notes. Well, 2 more stories today, and then we've got a big community section this week because all of your comments about range are on this show. Thank you if you submitted your comments. Well, moving to China, and the Baojun E200 is a 2-seater, cute-as-you-like city EV coming to China next month. The Baojun E200 is powered by a single electric motor located over the front axle, output 39 horsepower, top speed 100 kilometers an hour. You'd be brave if you do that, though, when you see pictures of it. It's tiny. The range is 210 kilometers, but measured by NEDC, which is the outgoing way of measuring range, I think, think like it's the last couple of weeks until WLTP takes over. Here in Europe, at least, according to Car News China, there's a small screen in front of the driver and another screen in the middle. Baojun is an entry-level brand under a joint venture of SAIC, GM and Wuling, in which General Motors has a 43% stake. The other partners, SAIC, otherwise known as Shanghai Auto, and Wuling Automotive. Their first electric baby was also the super cute Baojun E100, and that launched last year. I'll put a link to the Car News China article in the show notes. And finally, some great news for how Dieselgate money, that's the you've been very naughty VW money, is being spent in the USA with Electrify America now up to 10 ultra-fast charging stations open. I know that's not a lot. We're getting there. In total, there'll be 2,000 of them at 500 locations, and they cater for both 350 kilowatt CCS combo charging plus 50 kilowatt CHAdeMO plugs, but those CHAdeMO plugs, I think if I remember back to the original announcement, the idea was they could be upgraded to faster charge speeds over time with software updates. It's a 10-year plan, so these aren't all going to be done immediately, but the first $190 million will be spent by Electrify America by the end of July next year. That's for the highway chargers. The plan is for 950 chargers working by them, 300 highway chargers, and 650 community stations. That's the lower speed ones. However, I would point out, still no app, which I can find at least. I mean, I'm looking at the US App Store, but no app, correct me if I'm wrong, for Electrify America. We want those apps that show, is it available, is it being used, is it out of order, and you would say a very, very slow start to the rollout, 2 or 3 being done per month at the moment. They're going to have to massively up their game. I would love to have somebody from Electrify America on the podcast very soon to tell us all about it, to tell us what the plans are, to tell us how they're going to ramp that and get those installations, where they're going to, is it going to be at more Walmarts, for instance, and all those kind of things. I will definitely be in touch with them to try and arrange something before the end of the year with somebody from Electrify America. I'll put a link to the Inside EVs article on the show notes. Well, on to the bit of the show where you take over our podcast with our question of the week, set each week by the team at myev.com. And we have a brand new question for you in a moment. This week's question has been, do you really need all of that electric range? How much range is enough range? And what's your ideal? And how does that tie into battery charging speed and charging location? Well, Mark Garnett said this: ideally, we would split this between EV owners and EV non-owners, because I think you'd get a very different result. Non-EV people I speak to still want 300 miles or more. We all know the real-world usage is a lot less. My current EV is a B-Class electric drive, only does 75 to 95 in normal use. On the coldest day, slightly less. Hypermiling might get 110. We're a two-car family, so while the EV does most of the miles, especially due to no rapid charging, we use the other car, a stinky diesel, for long trips. Aaron Bounds said this: I've been driving a 24 kilowatt hour 2015 Nissan Leaf for nearly a year now, and have had exactly 0 range constraint problems. I commute 10 or 20 miles to work each day, one way, different locations, he says. I run errands for 4 small children, about 200 miles a week on average. I think the car is rated 107 miles or something like that, but I feel like the real world range is closer to 80 miles. It works, barely, but it works. Damien Davis says, I have about 70 to 75 miles on my i3, but I do have the Rex version, and after about putting 12,000 miles on it, I would say 5% of them are from gas. But if I want to visit my mum in Louisiana, I live in Texas, I have to take our Escape. If I had the 94 amp hour BMW i3, I wouldn't need the Rex, but I still wouldn't be able to visit mum. Well, Robert Nixon says, my ideal range, 200 miles. Toby Alich said, desirable EV range for me depends on charge speed. Also, let's pretend you can get from 10 to 80% at 70 kilowatt charge speed. Well, then 300 kilometers or 185 miles in winter would be my range. Hello to Alexander Nelson, who said, with a Model 3, a Tesla Model 3, I have 310 miles range, but would work with as little as 220 miles. I just couldn't wait for the standard range. My longest monthly trip is 180 miles, and there are superchargers at the 80 and 160 mile marks. Hi to Jerry A, says Martin, I think that 250 miles or 400 Ks is the most desirable amount of distance for an EV. Hi to Edward Pertinez. who said on our YouTube comments, 450 kilometres is range should be enough, not less. Reasons, right. Firstly, Edward says A, 450 kilometres of range can result in 250 kilometres if you go fast on the motorway. B, battery deg can make the range go down to 350 in 10 years. C, even when once in a while you'll recharge it on a road trip, if you had 450 kilometres of range, it would only be once or twice a year, more than acceptable. And D, 450 k's of range lets you charge the batteries to 80% and still have lots of range. You don't force the batteries for everyday use. Mark Tiller says, I'm probably overdoing the mileage, but I would say 200 is the ideal. Philip Allen, hello Philip, says, right, range. I'm running 2 ICE cars at the moment, but plan to change to EVs very soon. I may have a shorter range, smaller car for local trips that'll do most of my miles and trips, and then keep the second ICE car for longer trips. Robert Nixon on YouTube says, hi Martyn, I have a smart Forfour electric, range 100 miles, okay for me. With long distance, I'm worried about finding a place to charge. I wanted to go to Silverstone this year, but I had range anxiety. If you're outside the UK, Silverstone as in the Formula 1 racetrack. Well, the limousine line emailed me from Sydney to say, on the question of how much range do you need, for me, as much as possible. Operating my Model X as a chauffeured vehicle, range is very important. I've covered 100,000 kilometres in under 16 months, and it's been a phenomenal success. Thank you, Tesla, for saving my business. Go away, Audi, whose horrible Q7 nearly sent me broke, says the limousine line in Sydney. Hello to Alan. Alan Wardrop says, Martyn, I live in the Blue Mountains near Sydney. In Australia, I need 300 kilometres range to visit family. 600 kilometres range at 110 kilometres an hour would allow driving to Brisbane and Melbourne with only one recharge, a bit over 900 k's to either of these. Hi to Jeannie Gogo on YouTube. Says, Martyn, on the question of range, I'd like it if you'd put a cost equivalency for extending the range to answer this question. For example, if it costs $5,000 extra for each additional 100 miles, would you choose 100-mile base range or add $5,000, 200 miles, or add $10,000, 300 miles? If such is the case, I'd like to cheat and say I want close to 150-mile range for an extra $2,500. Well, Gary Wyatt Williams on the YouTube comments says, range is dependent on location. Here in the UK, travelling distances are way shorter. My weekly commute could be done on one overnight charge in my 40 kilowatt-hour Leaf and 2 or 3 overnight charges on a busy week and a fast charge for holidays 5 or 6 times a year. My regrets at not waiting for the 60 kilowatt-hour disappeared fast. It would have been a lot of extra expense and weight for very little gain. Give us a choice of battery size at purchase, but educate us on the reality of actual mileage. Neil on YouTube says, Martyn, my commute is 100 miles a day. My parents are 140 miles in the other direction. Ideal range for me, 300 miles, or 200 if there's a fast charger en route. And 2 more comments. Robert Ralston says, I think probably 250 miles is the ideal range. A 70 to 80 kilowatt-hour battery. I'd like the type of battery to be lithium-ion or solid state. Probably solid state in the future. Would have less problem with heat and cold and charging speeds of a 200 kilowatt charge speed as a minimum. Wow, that's fast. As a second thoughts, what about 2 batteries? A 40 kilowatt solid state, charge one, and then a 40 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery for different usage. I like that, Robert. 2 different style batteries in one car, depending on what kind of driving you're doing or what kind of charge speeds you're able to do. That's a really interesting idea. As costs come down, I'm like you're thinking. And finally, hello to Mr. McBeardface. Beardy McBeardface is a long-time listener of the podcast. For me, Martyn, personally, I do on average no more than 100 miles a week. I occasionally go a bit further, visiting the parents. Luckily, Mrs. McBeardface, her parents only live a few miles from mine. There and back, 160 miles. So 200 miles would be more than enough for me. If I went further afield, it'd be okay. I'm a strong believer that regular stops and breaks leads to safer roads due to less fatigue. A really good point there, and thank you so much for all of your comments. You can send your comments anytime through to hello@evnewsdaily.com. That is hello@evnewsdaily.com. And talking of comments, let's talk about next week's question of the week. So thank you very much to the gang at myev.com for setting this week's question of the week. And this is aimed at current EV owners, and it's a way of gauging certainly the current EV community, but a lot of the people who listen to this show are EV curious and will gain a lot from hearing from previous experiences. Here's the question: how much do you spend on your electric bill? A good bunch still believe that their home electric bill will skyrocket if they charge their EV at home. We all know it's not true, so why not remind other folks of it once again? That's a really great question, and I'd love to hear from existing EV owners that charge at home. How much has owning an EV changed your home electric bill? You can leave a comment on Facebook, on the YouTube comments, or the email address. Well, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to the 65 patrons of this podcast whose generosity means that I get to make the show for you, to entertain and inform thousands of other listeners around the world every single day towards a brighter future of transport. If you'd like to be one of those names that I read out from Patreon, please do feel free to check out the Patreon site, which is patreon.com/evnewsdaily. That is patreon.com/evnewsdaily. It doesn't have to be a $5 a month support. You can do whatever you like, a custom thing if it's $1 or $2. $5, which is just like a fancy coffee, not even that, once a month, and you get shows every single day, and hopefully you learn something, hopefully you're entertained, hopefully we're improving our knowledge a little bit and sharing the information together, and after each show you know a little bit more about EVs, and hopefully that is worth the investment, the support that those people put in to patreon.com/evnewsdaily. I'd love to be reading your name out on the next podcast if it's something that you are able to do, but if not, and if money's super tight, there is no obligation to at all. I will still be making these shows either way. There's 222 previous ones on all the usual podcast places. Stitcher's being a bit patchy, Google's being a bit patchy as well. The RSS feed is unchanged, so I'll get onto them and find out why. The blog's always there, evnewsdaily.com. You can go to YouTube. If you want to be a YouTube subscriber, click the little bell, the little alert thing. It means you get a notification when the show goes online, same time every single day. I'm a man of routine, a man of habit, and I do like to do it exactly at the same time every single day, so you know it's coming, and you can subscribe for free on YouTube and catch up on the socials, Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, by searching simply for EV News Daily. You'll find me. Come and say hello. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tomorrow.